One thing that I have learned from my body is that it is a measure of truth, that the physical body really doesn't lie, and it will show us when we are out of alignment.
So, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you.
So I would love to.
It's really exciting.
Yeah, I would love to start with just having you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and the story of you, the story that brought you to be this person that sits with me today.
Wow, Emily, that's a big question. Who am I? I am a rebel with a cause. My name is Ciela, and I am the founder and CEO of Jono Spark. And Jono Spark is really a canvas for me to live out my values and principles, along with my co-creators, Sarah and Sage. And we are really meeting this moment in time. I think I'm in this current exploration of how to be part of the solution, how to participate in this really incredible upheaval from where we've been into where we're going. And so when you ask me that question, who am I feel like I'm a participant, a co-creator, a poet, an artist, a spark, and an explorer.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about what Jono Spark is and kind of what brought you to creating it.
Jono Spark really was a gift in a moment where I was going through my own personal metamorphosis. I know that you can relate to that, and I'm sure many of us listening here today can relate to what that means. Like when we are moving through our own personal transit, and there's a dissolving of who we thought we were, our identity, of what was important to us. And in that process, it can be very daunting and uncomfortable. And Jono Spark was like an illumination for me in that moment, where who I thought I was dissolving, and moving through different layers of illusion and premise in which I had built my life. And Jono Spark kind of erupted inside of me like a vision. It was very volcanic, very heated, very feminine, on fire. And in the initial stages of Jono Spark, it was really a platform for creativity and expression of voice. So it was like this birthing of my own reclaiming of myself from where I had been oppressed, from where I had been imprisoned in my own lies, my own self-deception. And so Jono Spark came to be, and it's really been this incredible journey of now really seeing it as this spark generator, if you will, an invitation for us to take a deep dive, to go on the inner journey, to go on, this process of self-discovery, and then to bring forth what it is that we find there, the treasures that we find. And we call those sparks. So we're generating sparks as the basis of what it is that we're doing. And then there's a whole other exploration of what we can then do with those sparks.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about like what that looked like to discover yourself trapped in illusion and trapped in lies, and kind of that rebirthing, what that looked like for you?
Oh, it's messy, super messy.
It always is. It's the human experience.
Yeah, it's messy and it's beautiful because it's so raw and it's so real. And I think it's an experience that we avoid as humans because of the constructs in which we've created around our lives, what we deem as being safe, or our security, or what we know. And so there's this kind of avoidance or fear around actually taking a deep dive into some of those spaces that may be painful or uncomfortable, to discover oh, wow, I thought I was this. And I thought that my life was about this. And then we find that there's actually something much more intimate,
Mhm.
something much more powerful that is really resonant around who we are and our purpose. And
Mhm.
so that process of discovering that can be a paradox of both grieving who we've been and what we've known, and also holding on to something that feels like it represents stability, as well as enthusiastic. And it can be very exciting and liberating
Mhm.
to experience something new.
Yeah.
So I feel like it could be all those things. Look
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I feel like a lot of people have been realizing, especially this year with everything that this year has brought and kind of tearing down structures and security and having to look at the fact that to grow and to evolve as human beings, a lot of times that requires letting go of all the things that are keep that give us this illusion of safety and security. And when we shift our perspective and we move into something else, something bigger, stepping into our power, a lot of times that looks like letting go, and it's like a death process in order to get to rebirth. So I love that. That's something that I've definitely experienced and I think a lot of people can relate to. So what are some things that you feel like you've had to break free from and allow to shed and to die in order to step into your full power of who you are now?
Mm, thank you for asking. So many things. Um, One thing I feel is really in the way, and was definitely in the way for me, is this idea that we know,
Mhm.
like, that I know something,
Yeah.
and how that can be very much an obstacle from experiencing the unknown, the beauty, the majesty, the magic, the power in the unknown. We can't fully embrace that if we know or have it all figured out. And I think I don't necessarily feel like I came from an attitude of, oh, I have it all figured out consciously at all. But internally, that was definitely an element that was guiding me, because I felt safe there.
Yeah.
And even when I doubted it for good cause, I leaned into it because what I didn't know scared me, or the
Mhm.
possibility that what I did know not being real was terrifying, because I had built an entire life around what I thought I knew.
Mhm.
And so to really go into that, to look at that in a very real way, required an immense amount of courage. Because
Yeah.
when I ended up doing that, I found out, oh, it wasn't real at all.
Mm. What helps you come to that realization of, "Oh, what I thought was real isn't real?" What did that look like for you?
Mm, many sleepless, sweaty nights, dreams, really utilizing my dreams, or my being kind of working through me through my dreams to help me wake up to a new possibility of reality that I was shutting myself off from. Um, yeah, practicing deep listening, even with what I heard inside wasn't what I wanted to hear, because it wasn't comfortable.
Mhm.
So, I'd say finding those spaces within that we can actually connect with and begin to trust, even if it's not what we want to hear or what we want to see. Often those pathways can lead us into spaces that are so much more beautiful, real, resonant, true than what we can imagine. But the hallway to get there, the path to get there, can be very ugly and even disturbing. So
Yeah.
it's about that trusting of ourselves, right? So that we can walk through the difficult parts to get to the other side.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I love so much about what you're creating with Jonas Spark is that it's this push to trust our own intuition and to trust ourselves above all else, and that can feel so scary sometimes, and I think in a lot of like different aspects of our culture and a lot of aspects of spirituality, it can be like, don't listen to your body, don't trust yourself, like it can't be trusted, it's a liar, and that we put all of these other things on a pedestal above our own intuition. And so I love that you're creating this space that encourages us to trust that and to listen to that voice, because it's scary, especially when we're talking about like the psychological and spiritual beliefs about what life is, what this world is, what we're in. That can feel so scary to tear down those ideas and those narratives that can be so rooted in us. And I think it's really beautiful what you're creating to help people do that.
Thank you, Emily. I just wanted to mention something about what you just said, I think is so powerful. And as women, especially, we have a certain way to attune to our physical body. We're on these cycles. You know, it's perhaps a little bit more obvious than it is for men, but they are on their own cycles too. Mm-hmm. As a yoga teacher for many, many years, one thing that I have learned from my body is that it is a measure of truth, that the physical body really doesn't lie, and it will show us when we are out of alignment, mm-hmm. right? Through our health, through our energy. And so learning to trust, one way to learn to trust can be to start attuning to our health and our body, our personal cycles, and to listen to that language that doesn't have words, it doesn't have that particular articulation, but there's a knowing there in the body that we know when something feels off. Mm-hmm. And usually that knowing that when our body feels off, it's, you know, a few steps behind what has already occurred internally, or maybe even a year behind, or however long. But that can be a nice entry point.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some things you'd recommend if there's somebody listening who's like, I don't know how to listen to my body, I don't know how to trust myself, or what's just my negative thoughts speaking, or my fear, or what's my intuition? What would you recommend for someone on that journey?
I would say it's really exciting to be at that moment when you're starting to ask those questions, mm-hmm. because there is so much power in self-inquiry, and just beginning to ask those questions creates a possibility for us to then receive those answers internally. So I would say, amazing, keep going, ask the questions, because you know, we can ask ourselves questions just in our meditation, you know, finding some time to sit, to be with ourselves, to breathe, practice some yoga or dance or whatever the movement piece is, just to integrate the body into that experience of exploration. I love writing. I love journal prompts. I love just asking the question and writing it out at the top of my journal, and then free writing without thinking, without censoring myself, which is, it may sound easier than it actually is, you know, because those negative thoughts that you're speaking about, those negative feedback loops, they just repeat. And so if we can even have that observation of that internal dialogue, mm-hmm. we actually can reclaim a big part of our internal real estate just by that noticing, because we notice, and then we can take a step back and begin to observe. And then, well, let's explore that. What is that voice saying to me? What does it want from me? What is it trying to get me to do? What is it distracting me from? What am I missing out on because I'm attuned to this song over and over again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so powerful. That's been like really helpful. And I feel like there's so many different specific tools and ways that can help us do that. But at the end, it comes down to if we can get to a place of observing the thought and really questioning it, like, what is this? Like, why is this coming up? What is it trying to do? Like all those things that you're saying, we can really start to see through that. And I found a lot of the moments where I've felt that difference and really tapped into my power and my intuition, it's so much simpler than we think. It's like our mind wants to make things really complicated, and sometimes our external world can feel really complicated, but I found that inner voice to be so beautifully simple. which has been really amazing. So I'm curious to hear more kind of on that topic, that a lot of what you talk about with the Joan of Spark um, content that you've created is this idea of guru free. Can you tell us a little bit of what that means?
Yes, absolutely. For a decade of my life, I was involved in a spiritual organization where you know, the typical journey, right? Come in as a student, curious, um, really open, and then finding a connection, feeling a sense of belonging, feeling so moved by the teachings because there's a lot of truth in the teachings that are activating inside of me, a willingness to start changing my life and adapt so that I can be more available to this community. I can participate. I can start being of service. I can start working for this community. I can really, change my life and adapt to this new way of being and living so that I can feel fulfillment and purpose around this, to when I eventually ended up marrying into the community through a process of being groomed to become the next wife of the spiritual leader. So I have a very unique experience of what it is like to go through into an organization as such that has a guru type leader kind of at the top of this hierarchical mountain that seems so unreachable, yet there's this constant desire to see what it's like to be up there, like this magnetism of wanting to experience that. And then thankfully it all crumbled and dissolved before my eyes, that the veils parted and it all went up in flames for me personally, to the extent where I went from being, kind of a revered persona in this organization to then being seen as literally a demon, mentally ill and dangerous for everyone within the organization because I represented a threat to their belief system. So, going through that process really was the most difficult thing that ever happened to me and the most important gift I have ever received. Going through that process of being in the flames and having to dissolve my identity, losing my husband, my homes, my community, my livelihood, everything. And, I wouldn't change it for anything, because what comes out of that is that, like you mentioned earlier, the death and the rebirth. And the rebirth of that was, I learned my lessons. I really took them to heart. I lived through that metamorphic change that really allowed me to then rise into my truth and to be a stand for our liberation as human beings, for our sovereignty as human beings, for us to reclaim our own thoughts. There was something really clear about that kind of experience where I saw so many people, surgeons, lawyers, actors, musicians, just brilliant minds, give up their own ability to think for themselves and place it into the hands of one human being who represented God for them, as if we need an intermediary.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, coming out of that experience was just, okay, well, let's look at that as a tendency, because it's easy to see a guru as a spiritual leader, but how about our boss? How about our president? How about our partner? Like, where do we give our power away? How about a brand? Just all these different spaces where we have lost a sense of really asking the questions, because maybe we don't feel safe in asking questions, questioning authority. I remember in 5th grade, I had a bumper sticker, question authority, and it always sat with me as something important to do. And so guru-free philosophy is really created so that we can just bring this into the conversation, into our, collective conversation around where have we given our power away? And then this knowing that the true guru really exists inside of us. So bringing our intention back to where it belongs. And doesn't mean that we can't have teachers, we can't have guides, we can't have mentors. No, we definitely need those people in our lives. But there's a new way of learning and a new way of teaching that empowers individuals rather than creating codependency. So inside of this, we actually need to relearn how to learn so that we can learn, we can receive information, and there's not this giving up of our soul. There's not this exchange of, I want this information, and in exchange, I will give you my power. And also, as teachers, I challenge every teacher out there, every yoga teacher, meditation teacher, anyone who's on a pedestal in the mind of anyone else, just know that that pedestal will fall. So who are you without your followers, without your students? And how can we, teach from a place of authenticity and clarity and deep mutual respect?
Yes. Wow. That is all so good and like so on point with a lot of what my journey has been recently and what I've been learning in myself. And I think a lot of women in particular can probably resonate with that because we are kind of, I think we're all men and women kind of brought up and bred to not question authority. Don't ask questions, like look outside for the answers, let someone else tell you how to be. But especially women, we definitely are taught to give up our power and to trust authority, to trust the men around us, to be the voice of reason and to tell us how to be. And it's wild as I've come to realize that there's just so many stories happening in this reality and like who you're choosing to be around, who your tribe is, your community, your spiritual community, if it's that like a church or a teacher kind of structure, whatever that looks like, we can get it becomes our whole world, our whole reality, like that becomes the lens that we see everything through. And then oftentimes when someone does kind of say, oh, this isn't fit for me anymore, I'm going to go in a different direction, there is that like shunning that happens of your whole community that's like, oh, this is a threat because it's so scary to question, to wonder like, what if this is just a story and just something that I've gotten caught up in? What if it's not the one absolute truth that everyone else needs to like see things the way I see it? That's so threatening. And those wounds of losing a spiritual community are some of the hardest things because it does tend to be that way. You lose your whole structure of how to see the world, you lose your community, like you lose your whole life. And that is also something where because it takes so much away that there's that much more power to create something new and to really, like you said, learn the lessons and see through that, which is I think important for us all in one way or another to get to a place where we can claim our power and trust ourselves to know best. I catch myself in that all the time in just little ways where, and usually with men, where a man will say something that's in contradiction to what I think about something. And I'm so quick to assume that I'm the one who's probably wrong. Like, and so I've had to learn, okay, maybe. And I've had moments with male friends where we have a difference in opinion on something and I stick to my guns about it and I'm in my power about it. And then eventually they'll come around to me and be like, you were right. And that really taught me a lesson. Um, and that's been so powerful for me to realize my own power. And not only does that shift my reality when I stick to it, but that can also reach out to the people around you and help other people learn a lesson and learn to be in their own power when you choose to do that as well. So you're speaking my language. I love it.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. And thank you for sharing your experienced wisdom as a woman in that dynamic and dialogue. And something else that you spoke about, which I feel is important to those who are coming out of a spiritual community specifically, because I've spoken with a lot of women in particular who maybe have left the Mormon church or, a church, so to speak, or in my situation, it was more just like a cult, in the kind of cult definition that is spiritual organization, people following, not asking questions, not doubting, just kind of this inherent faith and belief in something, that something being someone who's saying all of these things, but not in themselves. And just in that particular circumstance, when it's spiritual, look at the risk, because what's at risk is your relationship to God. That's what they hold as this kind of carrot. Like, if you leave, if you don't believe how we believe, you're going to hell, or you're out. You're out of Eden. You are now with the devil, or you are a demon, or so the what's at risk of leaving something like that is extraordinary. And then I just want to say to everyone listening, if you're on the fence about leaving something that you don't feel is in alignment with who you are, leave. Just leave. It's so liberating on the other side.
I love that. It really is so simple. And I found in big ways in my life, I've left many spiritual communities of all kinds, and I've left friend groups and many situations, and always have found when you're like, so quickly, when you're removed from that, does the clarity start to come back so quickly. It's like almost like sobering up, like, whoa, I really got pulled into this whole thing. And then when you're able to create some space and check back in with yourself, the clarity comes so quickly, I've found.
Yes. And you should be able to leave. You should be free to leave and come as you go. And if you can't leave and come as you go, then that's a red flag.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Yeah, and the whole codependency aspect of that too is huge as well, because there's this responsibility of carrying the weight of like someone else's emotions or experiences or opinion of you, and like that people pleasing tendency of, well, I don't want to be seen as this to these people. And like that's something that's been really difficult too, that I've had to work on in myself in growing up in a lot of these types of situations, and rebuilding my own power and independence and trusting my intuition is coming head to head with that codependent tendency. It's definitely wrapped up in there too.
Yeah, and the strength that you exude today, Emily, is really a result of having done that work. So
yeah,
I acknowledge you for that.
Thank you. I would love to hear more about, so you have a book coming out and you have a online like retreat or course, or how are you calling it, what you have coming up?
Yeah. So we just published our first book at Spark Press from Jonah Spark, and it's called The Inner Journey. And this is the first book that I've written. And it's really a reflection. It's written as a mirror of inspiration. So I share my own personal process around inner work as a way to kind of invoke that inside of each of the reader, because there's nothing in this that you don't already have. And actually, we're already on the inner journey. We just don't always place our attention there. So there's something really powerful that happens when we place our attention into our inner world. We begin to nourish it. We begin to fertilize it. It begins to grow, and it begins to reveal itself over time to us. So it's already occurring. We're just mostly unconscious about this aspect of who we are being. And this part of us is the majority of who we are. So it's really exciting to be able to go in and start discovering this. And the course that we have called The Inner Journey as well, which starts September 8th through October 20th. And it's, Tuesday evenings. It's a 7-week course that we can come together and to do this deep, very individual dive amongst others who are doing the same. And then just having that support and being able to share and to go on that with others is really empowering, very, very healing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I'll be attending it and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's like, I'm always, any opportunity to be able to go deep with a community of people and really get some tools to help do that inner work, I think is so valuable. And it's so worth our time and investment to take an opportunity to get some guidance and accountability and structure around how to go on that inner journey, because it's the best thing that we could ever do for ourselves is to learn how to speak that language with our own intuition and to learn self inquiry. Like that is a skill that can be just transformational to our entire life. You can apply it to literally anything. And that's something that's super valuable. So I'm super excited that you're doing that. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Awesome, Emily. I would totally agree that this is worthy of our investment,
Yeah.
of our time, our focus, and maybe in these particular moments of life that we're experiencing through the global bond that we now have, having gone through a global pandemic together. And we're heading into an election that's very heated here in our country. There's so much that's activating inside of us. So to be able to go through a very delicate process in a safe container, and I say safe in the sense of, we've established a deep level of trust within our community, and then also just knowing that this is guru free. So it's not Velcro. There's no stickiness there. Like it's free. We can be fluid. We can be empowered. We can share our voice. We can ask questions, ask any question that we want, those kinds of things. And then not only are we going to discover ourselves through working out, particular areas of our fears or shadows, but we really are going to also find clarity around our particular purpose, because it's through this work that we can gain access to our personal insights and to greater creativity. And so it's fun as well, even though it is work. It's not inner vacation, it's inner work, but we really want to make this accessible. Yeah.
Beautiful. So if somebody's listening right now and they're like, is this something that's for me or not? Who is this for? Who's kind of the ideal person to go on this journey and be a part of this experience that you're creating?
Well, I love that question. Is this for me? I would say, yeah, ask that question and then listen to the answer.
Yeah.
Is this for me? Am I someone who wants to take a deeper dive into my inner world? Am I an adventurer of sorts, or am I wanting to become more of an explorer? Am I a rebel with the cause also? Do I have a big vision in my heart that I would like to bring to life? That's something else that we have within Jonas Spark, is we're really creating an incubator for visionaries. Mm-hmm. So I believe that every single one of us has a seed of potential that can really make an impact on this planet. And we want to help you bring that to life. So for anyone who is a problem solver or wants to be part of the solution, who wants to revolutionize a genre of our human experience, I would say, ask that question, is this for me?
Yeah. Yeah. There's kind of a shift in approach I found with people who are looking to improve their lives and maybe their mental health, maybe experiencing a lot of anxiety and like trauma that they're trying to heal, that you can go the approach of constantly like outsourcing your power to find someone who can fix you, and like signing up for, program after program and like, one-on-one sessions with people who are like promising like, oh, I can fix this, I can do this. And there's a shift when you decide to take that power back and can I learn the tools to do the work myself, to go in and find what I'm looking for within myself. And that's something that I found in my personal experience to be much more effective, like than outsourcing my power to someone else to fix me or to heal my trauma or to clear, whatever I'm struggling with, to actually invest in learning the tools to do that myself, to learn that I have the power to do it, and to have mentors and people and guides around me and the learn the tools that can kind of support me in that process, but always point the power back to me. So that's something that I've just found to be helpful. And so I love that that's kind of the approach that you guys take with everything you're creating. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing, Emily, because what you've just articulated so beautifully to me is the building block of the foundation of a new future that we can co-create together, which is around self-responsibility.
Yes, I love that. I heard recently a definition of responsibility that was just the ability to respond, because we make responsibility so much about blame, who's to blame, but we're all responsible because we all have the ability to respond to whatever comes our way. We might not be able to control life and our circumstances and the obstacles that happen to us. We can't control the actions of others or, you know, what they think about us, but we can always control our ability to respond. So
Beautiful.
well, I have a few rapid fire questions to close us out for you. Are you ready?
Great. Yeah.
The first one is, who or what is God to you?
God to me is everything good and the reason that I'm alive.
Why are we here?
We are here to be useful, to be of service from an inspired place within our hearts.
What is your current self-work?
My self-work is living and breathing and being present.
That's a good one. That's the one that can change everything. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say, I love you. Keep going. It just keeps getting better and better. Even through the difficult moments, you will get through this.
It's beautiful. Your most non-negotiable habit or practice?
My love for God, non-negotiable.
Love that. And your all-time favorite book? It's a hard one.
I love, it is, but I would say I love the collections of the poets, like of Rumi and Hafiz, like any of their books. They just pour love from the beloved through their hearts onto the page, into our hearts. And yeah,
I have a copy of
that's where it's at
The
for me.
Gift on my table in my living room, and I read it like every day. It gives me life. It's my favorite.
Yes, me
So I'm
too.
with you. And the last question is, if I told you right now that the whole world was listening to you on the other side of this microphone and you could tell them one thing, what would you tell them?
I would say, let's co-create a new world together. Everything is possible.
I love that. Well, I'll link all the stuff for the course and Joan of Spark and all of that. If you're watching on YouTube, that's going to be in the caption. If you're listening on the podcast, it'll be in the show notes. Where else can people find more about you and what you have coming up?
JoanofSpark.com. And I also have a personal website. I have a journal I write every week and a newsletter, so they could sign up for that at cielawynter.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ciela, and sharing your time with us. There's so much beautiful wisdom, and it's so inspiring to see everything that you've come through and the person that you are, and to take all of those hard things that you've had to face and create something so beautiful and helpful and empowering for people. I love seeing that. It's really amazing.
Thank you so much, Emily. It's really an honor to be here, and also just to be participating in a solution and co-create that with you and everyone else. So I'm open. I'm here to play.